All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the first interview on the Willie Does Wrestling YouTube channel. The first professional wrestler interview, at least, here on the Willie Does Wrestling YouTube channel. Today, I am here with Vinnie Davinci, who is a independent wrestler on a local independent company in my hometown as well, in Ontario, Canada. Vinny, thank you so much for coming onto the show. If you want, you could say a little bit about yourself.
Well, thanks everybody, and thanks for having me. And you fire away the questions, bro, and I'll do my best to answer them for you. How's that?
Yeah, that sounds very good. First off, and this is probably the most obvious out of any question, what got you into wrestling, both as a fan and then as an eventual wrestler?
um, my first experience, as far as like live professional wrestling, anything like that, my dad took me to the Memorial Gardens when I was a kid to watch the WWF when it came to town. So I was probably in the third or the fourth grade back when they did. They do events. They do house shows in Sudbury and in the Sioux. Um, Long time ago, obviously, because they ceased doing that many years ago. So yeah, I kind of, other than like Hulk Hogan being on TV and Sergeant Slaughter being on GI Joe, I hadn't really experienced wrestling until I went to go see it live, and I was just kind of hooked from there at that point.
All right, all right. And then, how did you evidently go from watching wrestling to wanting to train to be a wrestler?
Would have been tail end of the 90s. I remember being exposed to the cruiserweights in WCW and guys like Rey Mysterio that were smaller and not these larger than life giants that you're so used to seeing. So it kind of opened up a whole world to me, that not knowing that it would be possible, because I stopped growing when I hit about the eighth grade, so I've been as tall as I am now back then. So after that initial growth spurt, I didn't think it would even be a possibility for me to be anything more than just a fan, until I discovered that, okay, there's a whole subculture of wrestlers that are under 200 pounds. And so that
Yeah.
kind of opened up my eyes as far as, well, if they could do it, why can't I?
Yeah, basically. So how did you like train? Like, was there a local wrestling school? Did you fly out? How
Well,
did that come into place?
I was in my first year of post secondary school. I was going to school in Toronto. I was going to Humber, and it got brought to my attention that there was a wrestling school in not in the area, but relatively close, like two buses and a subway ride away. So and it was Ralph Wago School. It doesn't exist anymore. It kind of branched out, and a few of the other guys started their own things up. But at the time, he was trained by Ron Hutchinson, who
Mm.
a lot of the famous Canadian wrestlers had come out of as well, like Edge and Christian, Trish Stratus. So it was fairly well known. So Rob kind of took over the school. He opened his own. It was called Squared Circle Training. It moved around the GTA. And when I was going down to school in Toronto during my first year, I ended up starting to pick up classes, and I started training.
All right. And then how long was it from the start of your training to your first real like match, like your debut, basically?
Okay, so I started taking classes in Toronto in 2004. Would have been like August or September. I don't remember if I started before or after the school year had started. I trained for about 8 months, as much as I could. I ended up taking a bit of a gap year because of I had a co-op placement and I had school full time, and grades were starting to suffer. And I tried to wear too many hats at once, so I kind of had to kind of slow down, put my dreams on hold for a bit. It wasn't actually until I moved back up north that I got in with a group of wrestlers in the UP of Michigan, that were running shows out of the Savoy nightclub in Sioux, Michigan, the Armories, a whole bunch of places there. So I kind of just started showing up at events and, I'd help out with the ring. I would kind of pay my dues in a different way, spend a few minutes rolling around with the guys before shows. And then an opportunity presented itself in July 2006. They were partnering up with a Canadian that was looking to host events in the Sioux on our side of the border. So basically, I was given an opportunity to have my first match at the Legion here in Sault Ste. Marie. So I kind of had my first match in my hometown. And from there, it kind of just branched out into doing spot shows in Michigan. And then you start meeting people and you start, it opened up some other doors. I went down to like Cambridge, and I went down to Hamilton. And, it was a lot of networking in those early days. A lot of the times it was just driving to different shows and looking for opportunities, stuff that a lot of guys don't do nowadays. Like I remember before, there'd be 4 or 5 guys on deck, like just waiting for someone not to show up and maybe just get an opportunity, maybe not even get a payday out of it, but just, opportunity was there and people would take it, that sort of thing.
Okay. When were there like any famous wrestlers that may not have been famous back then that you've possibly trained with? Like anyone that was on their
Yeah,
set?
well, depending on your definition of levels of fame, right? Because some guys will get uh, some worldwide exposure. Some guys will just end up getting known as like indie darlings, or like guys in the locker room that everybody seems to know. When I was training in Toronto, one of the guys used to wrestle as Hornet. He worked around the territory for quite a few years, and then he ended up actually getting signed with WWE as a referee. He's still under their employ.
Mm.
His name's Daryl. So he's worked with NXT in a few different facets there. I trained, if you're familiar with the Bunny in AEW.
Yeah,
Yeah,
actually.
she was Cherry Bomb and on the Indies, and then she was Allie in TNA. So we started like the same, like I don't want to say the same day, but like the same week. Like so, we kind of broke in at the same time. Mike Elgin is still in Toronto training when I started attending the school, and then a lot of other mainstays from Ontario wrestling as well, like Ashley Six and Jake O'Reilly. Yeah, quite a few people came through those doors.
Yeah, that's crazy. Now in CWE, there's another member of the Davinci's, Diego.
Yeah.
How did you guys sort of break in together? And how is it like working with him both as a tag partner and as an opponent?
Okay, so that's a funny story because I'm gonna have to tell you a story in order to tell you a story. So, I've known Diego since I was a kid. We grew up. His parents' first house was next door to my grandparents, so I literally known him since I was in diapers. I was closer in age to his younger sister, so we kind of like hung out and played together when we were kids. Um, I kind of lost track of him because he's 10 years older than I am. He was always closer with my uncle than he was with me, obviously, for obvious reasons. But when I came back to the Sioux, I'd probably been wrestling about a year or two at that point. I ended up doing a show at the Elks Lodge downtown. And I remember I was in the opening match, and then I went outside to get some fresh air after the match, and I got cornered by him outside. He didn't recognize me at all because he hadn't seen me in probably 10 years. And he just kind of pulled me aside and he's like, "Hey," he's like, "you stole my brother's name." And I had no idea what he was talking about. And I'm like, "What are you talking about?" And he's like, "You stole my brother's name. My brother was a wrestler. His name was Rocco Davinci." And I'm like, "Okay, well, that's kind of a stretch." And he goes, "And his first name is Vince." And I was like, so I kind of popped there and I was
Wow.
like, and then I realized who he was. And I'm like, "You know who I am, right?" And I told him, I'm like, "I'm Rose's son." And he's like, "Oh my God." And he's like, how did you get that name?" And I told him the story. So like I said, I'll tell you the story to tell the story. So when I was, when I was training down in Toronto and I was trying to come up with a stage name, or ring name, whatever you want to call it. I was throwing around a few ideas. People have been calling me Vinnie since high school. So I was just kind of a given already. It was already a nickname that I had established. And then I was going to get my hair cut at this place called Davinci's in Toronto. And I
Oh
seen
wow.
it lit up in the marquee. It looked nice. And I thought it had a nice ring to it. So I pitched it to a few of the guys at the school, and one of the guys put it over, and he's like, yeah, it's Vinnie Davinci. It's got a good name to it. He goes, run with that, run with that. So lo and behold, I'm wrestling in the Sioux a few years later, and this guy pulls me aside and starts giving me a hard time because his brother had wrestled as Rocco Da Vinci.
Wow.
And then we kind of got to talking, and he said that he had always wanted to pursue wrestling, and he had the same opportunity as his brother to go wrestle, and he never took it when he was younger. It was something to do with his job or his situation, and then he ended up getting married, and by this point he'd actually gotten divorced, so he was just kind of like looking back at his life and like wanting to branch out and do different things. So I kind of took that as a sign that I'm like, well, if you're willing to learn, like I know a few people that can help. And he got some training from his brother, and then he got some training from another wrestler. And when I needed someone to ride with, he started riding with me, and it made the most sense. Just like, well, I'm a Da Vinci, your brother was a Da Vinci, you might as well be Da Vinci, and we'll just be the Da Vincis. And we just kind of started tagging and traveling together. And he kind of learned on the fly and kind of kept going with me. So, we did that for almost a decade, like probably 8 or 9 years. We were just traveling everywhere, splitting on gas, splitting on hotels, and just working everywhere we could get some more experience.
Yeah, and then the last time that I personally saw you at the CWE event, y'all had a Steel City street fight.
Mm-hmm.
Y'all were like battling all over the arena and all over the place. I remember. I think one of you were on top of the bartender tables.
Yeah.
Uh, I forget which one of you it was, but it was like crazy to see that like right up close and personal. So how was it like to then ultimately work with him in the ring after tagging with him for so long?
Oh, it's surreal in a way because he actually planned on retiring before COVID. So we had this. We had never wrestled each other one on one before, and we were trying to build up to this final match where like we'd wrestle each other. He wanted to have his last match against me. So we ended up doing that match in like December of 2019, and that was going to be it for him. And then next thing you know, COVID hits the next year, everything gets shut down. And throughout the pandemic, he was kind of like kicking himself. He's like, oh, maybe I can get a few more matches out of me. And I'm not that old yet. And he wanted to come back, and I didn't blame him because I've been doing this going on 18 years, and that stretch during the pandemic I was going stir crazy. Like I'd never been in one place for this long. Like I was home for pretty much 2 years without having any shows and without traveling. I think the furthest I went one time was to see some friends on Manitoulin Island. I'm used
Oh
to being on the
wow.
road every weekend almost. So yeah, he wanted to come back after the pandemic, and we just kind of picked things up where we left off, and we ended up battling each other back and forth in some capacity on these tours for almost 2 years. And then, yeah, so basically all of last year up until this past event that just happened in October. So we had our big final match where he had his manager Sergeant Commando in his corner, which you saw us stem from that street fight. And
Yeah.
I had Jacques Rougeau as a outside enforcer to keep the Sarge in line, and we just had a clean one-on-one match. And I finally beat him, and that was it. Now we're moving on to 2024, new opportunities, new opponents, and the world's our oyster at this point.
Yeah, exactly. Speaking of opponents, with these tours that the CWE has, they normally bring like all these WWE or Impact, WCW, what have you, alumni. For example, Eric Rowan was the last one that I went to, Austin Aries as well, Matt Taven a couple of years ago. What have you ever wrestled any of these legends? And if so, which ones do you recall wrestling against?
Quite a few, actually. I've been really fortunate with the way that I've been getting booked within CWE,
Yeah.
basically from 2018 until now. I've had a few encounters with quite a few, man. I wrestled Carlito here in the Sioux. I had a few matches with Psychosis throughout Canada between like here, Thunder Bay, and out west.
Okay.
I teamed up with Juventud Guerrera one time on a CWE event. I had other promotions. I'd wrestled with like Rene Dupree a few times. Like I did a tour, a Northern Reserve tour, where I basically wrestled Rene every night for a week. Um, yeah, a bunch of guys from like Ring of Honor, New Japan, Chase Owens from the Bullet Club. I wrestled him probably about 4 or 5 times in mixed tags and things like that. But I did have one singles match with him at the Tech. Uh,
Oh
yeah,
yeah,
I'm just
that
trying to
old
think.
building.
Scorpio, I've actually wrestled in a fatal four way before. So I had a match with Scorpio. It was supposed to be the Ron Simmons tour, and he ended up doing. That's back when CWE was running 30 events in 30 days throughout the country,
Ooh.
and it just ended up working out that uh, like Scorpio wasn't even supposed to be there. It was supposed to be Ron Simmons, but he had to leave because of a family thing after Winnipeg. So there was
Yeah.
about 2 or 3 dates past that they wouldn't have had a headliner, so he actually got Scorpio to come in, but it wasn't advertised. It was just kind of like you showed up at the show that day. Oops, surprise, we got Flash Funk tonight. So that it was kind of cool, especially for the guys in the back. That was one of my influences growing up. The guy basically pioneered the high flying style, especially for like heavyweights, and yeah, like so that was pretty cool. And now he's actually headlining a complete tour. So that's
Yeah.
yeah. So anybody that missed it the first time around, now it's advertised and they get a chance to come see him. So
That's awesome. So it's like backtracking now to like the promotion itself, CWE. How did they reach out to you, or was it like what you said earlier, just show up and hoping you get on there, or phone call, what have you?
at first, so CWE like this year coming up, they're going to be celebrating 15 years. So I ended up meeting Danny Duggan at an Impact tryout in 2011 or 2012 down in Oshawa. And so we met, like we just exchanged contact information, stuff like that. There was another locally run promotion that was running up here at the time, and CWE like typically tries to respect boundaries of other promotions, so they're not going to start running in other territories when there's already somebody else established there. So
Yeah.
CWE ended up, once that other promotion ended up closing, and it ceased operation for a couple of years. They were already coming out to Thunder Bay and they were looking to expand east. So if memory serves me correctly, CWE got in touch with Diego, wondering, hey, what's going on in the Sioux? Is this market available? Like we're looking to expand, and this is kind of the thing. So I kind of got the call basically because of Diego kind of being persistent and keeping in touch with a few guys from CWE, and I got the opportunity to wrestle on the first time that CWE came to the Sioux. I said I was getting
Wow.
thrown to the wolves because that was the first time I wrestled a Japanese wrestler that didn't speak English. So that was an interesting one, and I guess I did good because they just kept calling me after the fact, and I've basically been doing all these tours, the Ontario tours for sure. And then I've done a few stints where I've like gone up to Saskatchewan, done a few shows in Winnipeg, a couple other Manitoba tours. Yeah, since then. So it's just, minus the hiccup that was the pandemic, pretty much been getting steady work with them since
Yeah.
2017, early 2018.
Well, something must be going well considering how you're always booked in like the main event or co-main, and you get insane pops from the Sioux crowd. I mean, Sioux people love you. They love popping the hometown people. Out of all of your matches that you've had over the years, which one would you say is your favorite? Like, I know that's a little bit of a hard question, but if you could
That's a
name one,
stretch, man.
what would it
Yeah,
be?
like there's so many that I enjoyed for like so many different reasons. Whether it was, we had a really good attendance that night and everybody was into it, or I made good money that night. It depends, right? So I could definitely say like wrestling Carlito was a good one because he's back in WWE now, so it was kind
Yeah,
of
it's
cool to catch
crazy.
him while he was in between before his big resurgence. So that was a big one for me. Wrestling Psychosis was surreal because I grew up watching him as a kid, so that was kind of like, they were on the top back then. And then now that they're kind of, winding down their careers and I'm on my way up, it's like everything going full circle. Like I basically watched Psychosis wrestle Rey Mysterio throughout my teenage years. And then next thing you know, I'm in the Rey Mysterio role, and I'm working with someone that I grew up
Yeah.
idolizing. Yeah. So that was pretty sweet. Those are definitely two of the top ones. I've also had some other great matches with like local independent guys that you've probably never heard of, and it just sometimes you click well with people, and it's just, yeah, it's just good all around.
Yeah, okay. That's very cool. Yeah, no, it's crazy that feeling where it's like, yeah, you're on your way up because you're facing these big names that were big back in the day. Like that must have given you that feeling where it's like, I'm here, holy shit. I'm here, and these people that I've grown up with, I get to wrestle them, and that must be an honor.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's just especially for how long I've been doing this. Like it's nice to get those kind of like those nods back, where it's like, okay, I'm now wrestling at this upper level, and I have to keep climbing the ladder at this point because everything's this is how it's supposed to be. Like, you start, you plug away, you put in the work, you put in the training, you make all the sacrifices, you living out of a suitcase. And then next thing you know, like, okay, now these opportunities are showing up, and it's like, okay, you gotta keep the momentum going, and you gotta kind of keep proving that you're here for a reason. So these opportunities are only going to come up every now and then, so you got to make the most of them.
Yeah, exactly. And speaking of opportunities, if like everyone has dream opponents, this is the most fun part. Um, if you can wrestle any current day wrestler, any company, any, wrestler that's currently wrestling, if you were able, who would it be and necessarily why?
Okay, that's like a layered and loaded question because like there's so many different ways that you can go with that answer, right? um Dream opponents, like I'm nine times out of ten, I'm considered the good guy, right? I'm used to, I'm small, I'm not 6'5", I'm not power bombing guys. So chances are, unless it's given different circumstances, I'm going to be used as the baby face. So give me a good heel. If they can connect with the crowd and make them hate them, it just makes my job that much easier. So that being said, like if I had to look at the modern landscape of professional wrestling and the guys that are on top right now, obviously you're going to want to wrestle the top guys because that's where you're going to get the biggest paydays and you're going to get the most attention. If I had to choose, I would probably want to be up there with somebody like MJF right now. I think he's by far he's ahead of his time. He's an old school heel in the modern era. I think if you stuck him back with Piper back in the day, he would hold his own. And I think that he's one of those guys that you love to hate him. And he's almost teetering that line like Austin did, where it's like, oh, he's supposed to be a bad guy, but everybody loves him, right? So
Yeah.
that can go either way. So I put me out there with somebody like MJF. I think we could tell a great story, and I think that's the kind of that's somebody I would love to work with personally. On the opposite side of that coin, I'll say AJ Styles, just because whether he's a good guy or a bad guy or whatnot, he always delivers. I know a few guys that have actually had the opportunity to wrestle with him, and I don't get jealous or anything like that too often, but I hear these stories and it's like, man, that's so cool. Like, yeah, like I think someone like AJ Styles or MJF, yeah, but yeah, you could call it a dream match. You can call it whatever you want at that point. But I would definitely be open to something like that. But yeah, if you put me out there with a good heel, and let's see what happens, right?
Yeah, no, definitely. Like, yeah, AJ Styles would definitely be a good opponent for you. I bet that would tear the house down. Like you said, MJF subsequent feud at the start, and then the overall match afterwards. I could be 100% down for that. Good heel. Would you ever want to face Gunther? That dude?
Yeah, I wouldn't be opposed to it. Like, I know he's a big dude. He's a tough dude. He's a strong worker. So, I wouldn't be opposed to it. I try to look at things objectively, because a lot of the time there's been a few times where I've been in matches and I found myself in situations where it's like I didn't know how this match is going to go, or whatnot. And a lot of the times, like, the matches you don't think are going to be the greatest end up being some of the best times you've had out there. Just for whatever reason, things go good that day, or two people just find like a natural chemistry and can bounce off each other. And like I've had some matches where I thought, oh, I got to work with so and so. This is going to be the shits, and then it ended up being like a great time, and the people left happy. And so you never know. And then sometimes you get in your own head too much, and like you think, oh yeah, this match is going to be fantastic, and then it wasn't exactly Oscar worthy. So
Yeah.
and I'm
No,
not
no, as a
dropping any
wrestling
names
fan.
there. I'm just putting it out
Nope.
there. So there's been times where I've gone out there thinking we're having WrestleMania tonight, and you're like, that wasn't even worthy of Sunday Night Heat. So so
Yeah, no, as a fan, that's always common too, where it's like, hey, this match is going to be great, and then it just goes down the shitter, and yeah, vice versa. So, yeah, I wouldn't. Well, I would want to know, but I also wouldn't want to know. I would be like for a wrestler as well to be like, yeah, this is going to be great, and then it's like, but um, yeah. So, um, CWE has a few tours coming up. How often are you always like on the road? Is it like all the fucking time? You get like a little bit of a day off? How does that work?
so yeah, so like usually I'll jump in on the tours when they come through Ontario. He usually runs three to four times in each market a year, depending on time of year, that sort of thing. I think last year I did about 24, 25 dates throughout the year for them. There's also a couple other promotions I'll do spot shows for. So on average, I would say if it's like a tour month, I'm probably on the road uh, maybe 10 days out of the month. And then if it's just like a regular month, I'm probably working, maybe 3 or 4 shows a month on the weekends, that sort of thing. I also have another job I do as well in between. So it's a grind. It's like I don't sleep. So I'm either working or driving or doing both, and it is what it is.
Yeah. So you said you've had Impact tryouts. Have you ever appeared on any promotion, either how people would normally get spots as a security guard or an enhancement talent? Have you ever had any
The
appearances?
only kind of like spot gig that I ever got to do was, and I don't even remember what year it was. It was back when Seth Rollins was still working for Ring of Honor as Tyler Black. So him and Jimmy Jacobs were doing they had the big angle that they were doing, and they had a cage match in Detroit, and they needed a lot of extras for that. So I ended up getting an opportunity through a friend that was affiliated with like House of Truth with Truth Martini, and was good friends with them. So they needed a bunch of guys to come out and basically back up that angle and like tear the cage down and like just cause a big riot at the show. So I got to do spot show for Ring of Honor back then. I haven't had any opportunities with like the WWE or AEW yet, but I have sent some stuff out there. So whether or not I'm on anybody's radar or not is yet to be known. But I have stuck that out there. I have done some bigger indie shows down south, but I haven't had that opportunity yet for work on television.
Oh, well, I bet you could get that pretty soon. I mean, there's guys that it takes them a while. You've been on there since 2006 when the wrestling business was booming, if I do say so myself. Um, so yeah, no. What were your? This could probably be the last question. What were your main influences? You said Rey Mysterio, and Psychosis. Which were your main influences? Being like, that's a good guy, and maybe I want to wrestle him soon, or I want to be a little like him. Which wrestlers are your main influences growing up?
So my biggest influences, honestly, growing up, or even like when I started getting into the wrestling business, and like people I was like studying, or trying to find similarities between. Um, I always love Randy Savage, hands
Oh
down.
yes.
He's my all time favorite. Like, there's Hogan fans. I'm a Randy Savage guy through and through. Um, you tell kid me that he was supposed to be the bad guy, I think they're crazy, because I just loved him. He was nuts.
Yeah.
Randy, Eddie Guerrero, Rey Mysterio, Van Dam, I think, is probably the reason I actually pursued getting into wrestling, is because I discovered Rob Van Dam in the late '90s, and I was just like, this guy's nuts. Like, the matches he'd have with Jerry Lynn were it transcended wrestling at that point, because it was like watching like chess. Like, they were just back and forth, counters to counters, and like moves I'd never seen before. When you're used to like watching, the WWF back in the day, where a lot of the time it was Razor Ramon wrestling some nobody, local guy like me from wherever town they're in that night, crushing them in 5 minutes. And then next thing you know, you're watching these like 30-minute clinics where RVD and Jerry Lynn are hitting each other with everything, including the kitchen sink. So that was kind of like, that was when I was like, wow, this is awesome. I want to do that, and so I would definitely say that's up there. I'll always have a soft spot for Bret Hart. He's the Wayne Gretzky of wrestling, as far as I'm concerned. If you're Canadian, you know who Wayne Gretzky is, you know who Bret Hart is.
Yeah,
Whether you're a
pretty much.
wrestling fan or not, that's just it's in the culture. Shawn Michaels, like I could just keep naming guys off. Like, you can definitely
Yeah.
probably tell from watching my stuff, like, where I've taken little bits and pieces and then try to make things my own too. So
Yeah. Like, when I saw you, obviously I saw a little bit of Eddie Guerrero and Rey Mysterio in your stuff. No, that's not an insult by any means. Like, that's great. Um, But actually, no, that's a lie. That was not my final question. Uh, this is a very fun one. Talked about dream matches, titles. What dream title do you want to hold if you were ever able to, if you ever got the opportunity?
Ah, that's a tough one because obviously everybody wants to be the world champion, but in a
Yeah,
realistic world, I'm 5'5", so honestly, like if it came down to it, if I got to hold like a world title or anything like that, I wouldn't say no. But if anything, I'd love to be the Intercontinental Champion.
yeah,
That
that's
belt
my
has always been associated with the guys that are considered to be the workhorses. So, I would much rather be known as a great intercontinental champion than to have held the world title for a couple of months or 6 months. If I could have like a run with the intercontinental title, that would be a dream self actualizing for me, 100%.
Yeah, that'd be wild. Yeah, Intercontinental is definitely my favorite championship of all time. A lot of the greats held it. So yeah, no, I mean, seeing you as Intercontinental Champion someday, that would probably bring warm feelings to my heart. That'd be freaking great. But yeah, no, before I let you go, CWE has a couple of tours. You wanna advertise some? If
Yeah,
you can?
yeah.
Yeah.
So big start to next year. So they're doing some crazy touring throughout the month of November. They're hitting three provinces. They're hitting Manitoba, Saskatchewan, and Alberta, and then taking a bit of a break and coming back to Ontario. January 2nd will be a debut event in Michigan First Nation in Manitoulin Island, the third in Sudbury, the fourth in Elliott Lake, the fifth here in the Sioux. And then unfortunately, that's the extent of my commitments on that leg of the tour. But CW will also be returning to Thunder Bay, Ontario on January 6th, the Saturday, and making not a debut, but a rebut in Dryden for the first time in 10 years. So there's going to be 6 events in 6 days in January for the Ontario leg of CWE's 15th anniversary tour. And then, I have some other dates coming up as well for a few other organizations leading into February. And then, the rest of the year, those dates will come up as they come up. So,
All right, that's wild. But yeah, no. Thank you so much, Vinny, for
yeah, no problem, Willie.
hopping on. I obviously a little bit of backstory, which I think I gave in the beginning of the video. I've seen Vinnie Davinci live a couple of times, a handful of times over the past few years. Always a joy to watch. Thank you so much. It's been a huge honor for you to be the first wrestler that I interview. Thank you so much for hopping on as well. So, yeah, ladies and gentlemen, that's going to be it for the Unscripted podcast. First ever Willie Does Wrestling interview with Vinnie Davinci. Do you got anything else you would like to say before we wrap things up?
Um, I'm good, bro. I just thanks for asking me to come out. Good luck with the podcast, and hope you get a lot of views, get a lot of follows, and just support local independent wrestling.
Yeah, of course. If this podcast isn't, doesn't get a lot of views at all, just support indie wrestling, ladies and gentlemen. Indie wrestling, their guys kill it over there. Yeah, no, that's a very good message to put out to everyone. Be sure to like, be sure to subscribe, turn post notifications on, share it around, watch Vinny's stuff. They're over on YouTube. And yeah, that's about it. This has been your boy Willie Does Wrestling here with Vinnie Davinci. We will see you in the next. Well, I will see you in the next video. Be good people and peace.